The problem with our brain and how it works is if we say something long enough and repeat it with enough conviction, even if it is a lie, even if it is false, our mind at some level will start to believe it to be true. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. You know what time it is. It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. Always a pleasure to spend some time with you. I hope your year is finishing up amazing. If this launches when I think it launches, it's going to be right at the end of the year, right? But many of you might not listen to it until 2024. But either way, life is awesome, and I hope you are crushing it each and every day. For those that are loyal listeners, thank you so much. I always appreciate hearing the comments and the feedback, so please keep sharing it. My team always passes it on to me, and I always love hearing it. If this is your first time listening, welcome, welcome, welcome. I only have one question for you. Where you've been? Right, we've been doing this for a couple of years, and I get excited every single week when I get to record Life of a CISO. So today's topic is one that's really near and dear to me. This applies to all areas of your life, and it's this idea between fact versus fiction. And the difference is what is actually true and what is not. Now, here's the problem. The problem with our brain and how it works is if we say something long enough and repeat it with enough conviction, even if it is a lie, even if it is false, our mind at some level will start to believe it to be true. We will start to believe it to be a fact. And that's when things get a little spicy, right? That's when things start getting a little out of hand, because if we are basing our life based on a fact, something that we believe to be true, to be an absolute truth, and it's not, it's actually wrong. It's actually false. It's actually, you know what? A pile of BS. The problem is that's going to cause us to act and behave in certain ways that are not actually correct or true, because what we believe to be true is actually false. So this is something that impacts all areas, your life and how you show up. And also, it's very important to understand and know as a Chief Information Security Officer. Now, if you don't know, I have another podcast. It's been going, I think, about 6 or 7 months. I think we're up to about episode 30 or so, called Bulletproof Cyber. And that's all focused on mindset. What I decided to do is, instead of trying to merge mindset and Chief Information Security Officer in this one, I actually broke it out. So if you want to understand, I'm actually going to do probably next week, I'm going to do an episode on fact versus fiction from a mindset standpoint. Purely mindset, nothing to do with cybersecurity. Well, it has to do with cyber, but not directly with cybersecurity. But I'm going to focus here on cybersecurity, because to become a Chief Information Security Officer and to effectively show up in that role and be world class, you have to be a master of recognizing and differentiating between fact versus fiction, and being able to fix and clean that up. Because if your executives are walking around with things about cybersecurity that they truly believe to be a fact, and it's fiction, can you see how that might cause some problems? That might cause some issues for you, the team, and the company. And also, if you are walking around with some perceptions that you believe to be facts, and are actually fiction, can you see how that could also potentially get you into trouble? So one that I run across all the time, it's one that it's sort of one of my specialties, because most people that hire me to do personal coaching who are stuck, if they are stuck in one or two areas, either they're trying to become a CISO for the first time and they are not able to get a job. That's primarily, that's probably 85% of the people I work with one-on-one. And then the other 15% are people that have got a job as a CISO, but they can't get promoted. They know they got their one job, but they can't move up to bigger companies. They can't get promoted. They can't get to a bigger company. Anytime they apply for a job, they don't seem to do well on the interviews. They don't seem to get an offer, and they sort of feel like, hey, I'm in this hard position. And what happens is, by the time they come to me, they're very, very, very close to being in a dangerous area. And that dangerous area is they are very close to making a fictional statement a fact, and it's this. Almost all my one-on-one clients, at some point within the first 5 minutes for on our first call, a phrase like this will come out of their mouth. Eric, I've been trying for 2 or 3 years. I feel like I thought I had the skills. I thought I had what I needed, but I'm just starting to recognize that I'm just not CISO material. I'm just starting to accept the fact that I'm not going to be a CISO. I'm not CISO material. No one's going to hire me to be a CISO. I should just stick with what I was doing, just stick with being a security engineer, because I am just not built to be a CISO. And the problem is, because every time they apply for a job and they either don't get an interview, or every time they go for an interview and they don't get a job offer or they don't get a follow-up, instead of stepping back and going, maybe I'm not showing up with the right level of confidence. Maybe I'm not saying the right things. Maybe I'm not presenting myself correctly. Instead, to try to defend and protect, they're coming up with this false statement that I'm not CISO material, but they've said it over and over and over. They kept saying this lie over and over again, that they start to believe it to be true. And the problem is, once that happens, if you don't get some help, if you don't get some coaching, unfortunately, you'll never become a CISO. And this is the hard part. This is the part that breaks my heart. The world will never hear your beautiful music, because you're telling yourself a lie that's putting yourself in a prison. You are CISO material. You just need to do a couple tweaks. You need to make a couple changes. And here's the real question. What the heck is CISO material? And I love saying that to people. They're like, I'm not CISO material. I'm like, well, tell me what CISO material is. And they're like, well, I don't know. I'm like, then how do you know you're not it? And then the fun part is when I have them make a list, 99 out of 100 times they are CISO material. And once we shift it, once I prove to them they are, once I show them that they're not CISO material is false and they are CISO material is true, within a couple months, boom, they get jobs. They get multiple jobs. Most of the folks that I work with are so good, they just told themselves lies and believed it to be true, that they actually get multiple offers, and the companies get into bidding wars where they keep offering them higher salaries because they want them at the company so bad. So you, being a CISO, need to recognize that you might be telling yourself lies. You might be going in and being your own worst enemy in your ultimate success. And then what's the other big false lie that CISOs love to tell themselves? Executives don't care about security. Eric, I sit in the boardroom, I present, they have me come once or twice a year to present cybersecurity, and nobody listens, nobody pays attention, nobody asks questions, nobody really cares. The company put me in as a CISO to check a box because they needed it for regulation, they needed it for other reasons, but none of the executives care about cybersecurity. And then here's why this is so dangerous. If you don't think somebody else cares, if you don't think you're important to somebody else, what do you tend to do? You tend to stop caring. And then this snowball starts rolling down the hill. Well, because they don't care, I don't care. And because I don't care, they don't care. And then all of a sudden, you get these relationships in these companies where the executives actually really care about cyber. It's one of their top priorities. It's the reason why they keep inviting the CISO. The problem is the CISO is not speaking the right language. And the executives are not asking the right question. And I'm not here to point fingers, but the reality is I am coaching you, not them. So if I'm coaching you, I'm going to show you how to fix the problem. So I just want to be careful here because I have some CISOs, when we go down this route, they're like, Eric, why do you always blame the CISO? Why do you always say it's the CISO's fault? Why don't you go and tell the executives to change? A couple of reasons. First, let me make it real simple for you. Let me give you a couple of rules of life. Whoever can fire the other person typically is the one that doesn't have to change. So can you fire your CEO? No. Can your CEO fire you? Yes. So guess what? If you want to be successful and they can fire you and you can't fire them, then you need to change, not them. Second, I'm coaching you. Yes, I coach executives and I tell them how they can ask better questions and things like that, but this is not life of a CEO. This is life of a CISO, so I'm going to help you and focus in on you. The reality is you're not speaking their language. But instead of going in, presenting to the board, nobody listens to you and coming away going, maybe I need to understand what they need a little better. Maybe I need to ask more questions. Maybe I need to tone down the geek and crank up the business. Maybe I need to spend more time understanding what's important to the business and how security can negatively impact it. But unfortunately, most people, instead of asking those questions, it's easier to come to a false fact and say, they don't care. They don't care about cyber. I don't care. And then the whole house of cards falls apart very, very quickly. So just make sure you are constantly looking out and saying, okay, where in showing up as a chief information security officer, as a chief officer focusing on information security, where is it that I might have some fictional facts? Where is it that I might have told myself a lie long enough and hard enough that I'm starting to believe it and it's just not true? But what I want to do now is shift gears. What I want to do now is go over with you some of the fact versus fiction that you're going to run across in being a chief information security officer. And these are critical not only for you to know, not only for you to identify, but for you to be able to fix. Because if you can't fix these, they're going to stop you from being a world-class CISO. They're going to stop you from being as successful as you can. So one of the biggest lies that people tell is world-class security engineers make world-class CISOs. That is not true. That is a lie, and this is, to me, one of the biggest reasons why CISOs is one of the most dysfunctional positions in most companies. It's because we have told ourselves this lie that, oh, the only way to become a CISO is to be a world-class security engineer for 10 or 12 years, and then so the company doesn't lose you, they promote you to a CISO as sort of a reward for all of your hard work for staying at that company. It's a great fact. It's a great ego boost. It's a great thing that engineers have repeated over and over and over themselves that, oh, the only way to become a CISO is to become a world-class engineer and get promoted, but it is one of the biggest lies. And the reason is simple. Being a security engineer is completely different mindset, skill set, and career path than being a chief information security officer. Being a world-class security engineer is pure play technical. Your focus is to find problems. Your focus is to find vulnerabilities. Your focus is to find weaknesses. Your focus is to find risk and point out everything that's wrong with an organization. A chief information security officer is not technical. They need to understand and have some technical skills, but it's not a technical position. It's a strategic position. And in being a strategic position, it needs to focus on solutions, not problems. It also needs to recognize that there are some times where you have to accept risks. Most world-class security engineers have a hard time with that. Most world-class security engineers have a really hard time when I say one of the foundational, fundamental, factual rules of an organization is if cybersecurity negatively impacts the business, cyber is wrong. They have trouble with that. No, Eric, there's some case. Nope. There's no cases. No, Eric, there actually are some. You can keep talking. I'll let you finish. All right? And you can finish saying there's some cases where cybersecurity should overrule and negatively impact the business. And the bottom line truth is, no, there's not. Because that's not a business. If you're running a business and you are constantly or even periodically going, we're going to make some decisions right now that hurt the revenue. We're going to make some decisions right now that hurt our profitability. We're going to make some decisions right now that hurt our customers and cause us to lose business. You are not going to be a chief officer very long. Chief officers are all about growth of the company, maximizing revenue, maximizing profitability. So no, there are no cases where that should be true. Security engineers think it is. CISOs know it's not. But if you're a security engineer wearing a CISO title, but you still have that belief, you're not going to be very successful. You're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. So the reality is, yes, you do need to understand security. And this is where people misunderstand. I hear all the time and they go, Eric, when you say security engineers, the longer you're a security engineer, the less effective you typically are at being a CISO. I don't agree with that because CISOs need to understand cyber. Of course, I didn't say that. I didn't say that a CISO should be ignorant on security. That's like saying a CFO should be ignorant on finances. But let's go down that road. CFOs need to understand finances. They need to understand profit and loss. They need to know that really well. But I would argue the same thing. The longer somebody is an accountant, the longer somebody digs into the numbers, loves the numbers and does that, they would probably be less effective at a CFO. Right? Most CFOs, 3 to 5 years, they go to business school, they understand numbers, but then they move on to the business because they like the strategy. I don't know a lot of CFOs that have been accountants for 18 to 20 years. Right? Technical versus strategy. It's the same thing here. Right? Yes, you should be a cybersecurity engineer for a few years, but your focus and goal and love is more on the strategy and the business and less on the technical. Because the reality is this: if you've done something for 12 to 15 years, unless you just like torturing yourself, unless you're just into cruel and unusual punishment, it probably means you like it. It probably means you enjoy it. So my first question is, if you enjoy being a security engineer and you've done it for 12 to 15 years, why would you switch? Why would you want to do something else? You love what you do. Most people don't. Congratulations. You found something you love. You found your purpose in life. Why would you want to switch? Why would you want to change? Second, if you've done something for 12 to 15 years, you have a lot of habits. You have a lot of beliefs. You have a lot of training in that area. So you're going to, yes, I've seen a few cases, not a lot, but I've seen a few cases where world-class security engineers that have been doing it for 15 years can become world-class CISOs. It's hard. It's difficult because basically you have to retrain yourself. Retrain how you think, retrain how you show up, retrain everything, because what you've done for 15 years works well there, but it doesn't work well here. So we just want to go in this fact that, the only way to be a CISO is to be a security engineer for 12 to 15 years is fictional. It's not true, and it gets more people into trouble. If you love being a security engineer, embrace it. Own it, right? Do what you love. Now, related to that, the next fact versus fiction is a CISO needs to understand and have a security background. That one I do agree. That one I do agree has factual nature. So the reverse one, and this is, once again, where companies get themselves into trouble. It's this overreacting, overcompensating. Instead of small adjustments, they make these huge adjustments. So what happens is they take a world-class security engineer who's been doing it for 15 years. Amazing, awesome, crushing it. And they make them CISO. And it's a disaster. Because they don't speak business. They can't communicate with the executives. They think that security is more important than the business. They think there are cases where even if security negatively impacts the business, it should still be done. And that is just not true and not correct. So it's disaster, chaos, crash and burn. So what do? Instead of making small adjustments, which is the best way, they go the other extreme. They say, okay, this CISO doesn't understand business, doesn't know business, can't speak to us, can't communicate, cannot effectively do the job. We need a business person. So then they go to a business school and they get somebody with a business degree who has no security experience. Maybe they took a course, maybe they didn't, but no experience, never been a security engineer, never worked in the position. And they put them in. And then here's what happens. From the executive standpoint, this person's brilliant because they have the chief officer. So they can communicate business, they can talk business, and it's great and it works great. And these executives are like, yes, we found our person. This is the solution. This is great. This is awesome. And typically, they have this false belief for a year or two that this was the solution and CISOs don't need to have a security background. And then what happens? A massive breach occurs because that CISO doesn't understand security. They isolated their team. They don't listen to their team. They're not communicating with their team. So yes, the executives think they're great because they're talking to them and they're talking business related, but it's all lies. It's all fiction. They're just making it up and it's not true. So now the executives are making decisions and thinking they're secure and they're not, because the business person can't speak cyber. They can't communicate with the team, so they don't listen. They isolate their team. Their team is frustrated. The team ends up leaving. Their high-quality folks leave. They get low-quality folks that will just adhere to a CISO that doesn't know what they're doing. And like I said, those are usually the companies that end up having these massive breaches. And you're like, how in the world could this have happened? It's because, once again, they took a factual statement, they believed it to be true, and it was actually, they took a fictional statement, believed it to be true as a fact, and it wasn't. So the reality is this. To be a Chief Information Security Officer, we need to take CISO and break it into two groupings, the outer letters and the inner letters. So to be a CISO, the outer letters, you need to understand business. You need to be a chief officer. You need to understand how to communicate and talk business, think business, and help increase revenue and profitability. One skill. But, we can't forget the inner layers. Information security. You must also understand information security. You must also understand cyber. You must also understand how that works, how that operates, and how that functions. So you need to have both. You need to have an understanding and focus on business and strategy, and you need to know how to speak and talk and understand cyber, because the reality is, if you can only communicate with your security engineers, but you can't communicate with the executives, there's a wall here, you're not going to be effective. But if you go the other extreme and you can speak to the executives, but you can't speak to your security team, that's also going to be ineffective. So the fact is, world-class CISOs need to have a business understanding and background and need to have a cyber background. Now, just so we're clear, it doesn't have to be formal. Some of the best CISOs actually learn business on the job. Some of the best world-class CISOs started off as security engineers for 2 or 3 years. They then start being more interested in business than technology, so they start getting jobs as directors and managers and vice presidents and understand business on the job training. They might or might not get a business degree. That's not necessary. They read a lot of business books. They focus a lot on business, and they're able to pick up the business as part of the on-the-job training. In my experience, that tends to work the best, because the reality is this: business can be learned on the job if you have the right mindset and focus. Security is harder. So if you've only gone to business school, you don't understand tech, you don't understand protocols, you don't understand all that stuff, and you're in a business position trying to pick up cyber on the job, typically can be harder. Can it be done? Yes. Have I seen a few? Yes. But the typical career track for the best possibility of success, 3 to 5 years as a security engineer, but focus more on program management and business and being managers and directors and vice presidents while doing your security job. And then that tends to be that special mixture that makes you very, very effective. The next sort of fact versus fiction, and this is from security CISO's standpoint. I sort of covered it, but I want to hit it again. Executives do not care about security. Eric, every time I try to set up meetings with them, they won't take the meetings. When I do have meetings, they cancel the meetings, they reschedule the meetings. They don't invite me to the business meetings. They don't invite me to the quarterly board of director meetings. I'll show up once in a while, but nobody listens, nobody engages, nobody asks questions. So based on all of that data, they will fictionally create a statement that they believe is a fact, which is executives do not care about cybersecurity. Here's the fact. In most companies, most businesses, and most organizations, cybersecurity is the top concern of the executives. I spend a ton of my time in boardrooms, in talking with executives, in working with executives, because the reality is, Eric, they look at me and go, Eric, our number one priority is cybersecurity. It's the one thing that we don't understand. It's the one thing we have the least control of, and it's the one thing that can have the biggest negatively impact on our revenue and profitability in the quickest amount of time. Yet we don't understand it, we don't know about it, and the people within our company that are supposedly security experts aren't able to speak our language and communicate it to us. So they go outside. They go to people like me or others that can actually translate, speak business, and speak in a language they understand, so they can then put effective measures in place to secure the organization. But the reality is, the CISO should really be filling that role. But the CISO took a fictional statement, made it a fact, and they believe it to be true. The factual statement, like I said, is cybersecurity is one of the top concerns. If it's not number one at most companies, it's number 2 or number 3. It's always the top 3. I haven't seen a single company that I've worked with in the last 2 years in which cybersecurity is not one of the top 3. So the true factual statement is cybersecurity is their top concern. So now you as a CISO have to sit there and go, if the factual statement is executives care about cyber, but I'm not invited to meetings, I'm not being asked questions, I'm not being involved in the business, and I'm not invited to all of the quarterly meetings, what does that tell you? That tells you that I'm not filling the role the way they want it to be filled. And one of the simplest, easiest ways to get this train back on the track, simple, but for some reason, many people, especially technical people, we don't like communication, or we don't like any communication that might have the least bit of confrontation involved with it. And it's real simple. They go to the executive and go, listen, is cybersecurity one of your top concerns? Yes or no? And they'll, of course, come back and say yes. Great. So if cybersecurity is one of your top concerns, and I'm not invited to the meetings and we don't talk on a regular basis, how do we fix that? Or why? If cybersecurity is your top concern and I'm your top security person, your chief information security officer, how come I'm not invited to meetings? How come I'm not invited to critical discussions? And be ready for the real answer. It's because whenever we invite you, you don't answer our questions. You don't speak English. You don't understand the business. I can guarantee you do those things. So you can ask them and they'll tell you, or you can take my word for it and fix it. Start speaking language of business. Start focusing on revenue and profitability, and start recognizing that executives do not care about security is fiction. And the true factual statement is executives have cybersecurity as one of their top priorities. So I'm going to wrap up, and we're going to actually do a part 2 of this. I wrote down about 10 fact or fictions. We only got through about 5 of those, so we still have a bunch more to go. So stay tuned for next week. We're going to do part 2 of fact versus fiction. And as always, thank you for listening to Life of a CISO, and we'll see you next week.